I'm Dale Evans,
And I'm Roy Rogers.
and we're stronger together. Today's topic comes with a trigger warning. We'll be talking about being triggered in our grief journey. It's the unavoidable result of losing an emotional connection we had with someone or sometimes just something.
Triggers can sometimes be predictable. We know going into a situation that things are going to feel painful. Other triggers seem to come out of nowhere. Those are the random shots to the heart from an unseen gunslinger.
Building on our personal story, we left off when Roy and Dale started walking together. There wasn't any spark or physical chemistry. We were both much too mired in our own grief to even recognize anything resembling attraction. But we did have a connection. We were both working through the mourning process. As we expanded our time together, we branched out really slowly. We also recognized that we needed each other.
As I changed my focus from my loss to helping someone else manage their grief journey, the fog began to lift from my mind. It was nice to feel needed again by someone. I could give my time and efforts into building my purpose. In having honest and open conversations with Dale, I could reflect on my behaviors to see if I needed to change things. She was coming from a place of mistrust and manipulation. I took the messaging she was sharing to make sure that I hadn't been guilty of that behavior in my relationship, and I definitely didn't want to make it a part of my future behavior.
It was nice to have someone who wasn't trying to manipulate me or change my viewpoints. I could ask deep questions that I knew could potentially trigger Roy, but he was always honest in his reflections. We supported each other when the triggers came. They aren't avoidable or to be buried in platitudes. By facing them head on, they lose some of their power. It doesn't mean they go away. It can mean that they lose some of their grip, though. Eventually, they begin to fade as we manage to recognize them. They never fully disappear, but do become part of the saddle pack. So let's take a look at the types of triggers that can come at us. The first one is probably the most significant, the emotional triggers. And these are those sneaky polecats that are usually tied to some baggage from our childhood. We pack those up neatly in our saddlebags and strap them onto our trusty steed to ride into our futures. They burst out of their packs to level us at the most vulnerable times in our lives. These can lead to crying spells, depression, anxiety, and unhealthy emotional eating or drinking, or worse. So how do we wrangle these up? First, we have to recognize it for what it is. It's not a weakness in us. It's a part of our memory files. Take some reflective time and discover where it came from. This takes time. Be patient with yourself. Sometimes those cupboard doors that have been shut for years and years and years are hard to open. You got to unstick the lock. Sometimes you got to pick the lock. Sometimes you just have to blow it up. But don't be afraid of what's in there. There's a lot of truth there. And next, I want you to understand that this is just a moment in time. It's a spark that'll fade as we let it extinguish itself. If we fan it with feelings of failure or defeat, it'll just get bigger and bigger. Ignoring it or pushing it down will give it even more power. Notice the reactions you have. Sometimes it's anger, crying, fear. Take some deep, slow breaths. Slow down the cascade of emotions coming at you and recognize what's happening. Even give it identity if you need to. You can name it something from your favorite evil persona. Maybe it's named Ursula. Maybe it's named the Borg. Whatever fits your mind as to what this thing is that's taking control.
Most importantly, we give those up to God as He's the ultimate healer. Surrender those feelings for Him to handle. Psalm 18, 1 and 2. I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. You don't have to overcome those things on your own. You can lay them at the feet of God. He understands. The second type of trigger, the sensory triggers. These come at us when we revisit a place, smell something familiar, hear a song that reminds us of a time or a person, even something like seeing a loved one's handwriting or reading a letter. These can bring us back to that place of grief. Here's a story for you.
So we expanded our walking to actually going to public places together. One of my favorite places to go was a local nursery that had lots of cheerful plants and blooming flowers, and I actually landscaped our whole house with items from that nursery. I didn't know if Roy had ever been there before, so I asked if he wanted to tag along. I figured he could be there to help me carry the big stuff, the heavy stuff, do my heavy lifting for me.
I carry things.
He was really good at that. So we get out of the car and we walk toward the entrance and we both stopped dead in our tracks. I don't even think we made eye contact, but the next thing I know, we were both crying. I was grieving losses that were tied to losing my home and my divorce and all the work I'd put in to the yard and all the things that it meant. I don't plant things just randomly. They all have a meaning. And those are all gone. And it hit me harder than I thought. That was one of those polecat triggers I was not expecting. I expected to go there and feel happy and uplifted and joyful because that's what that place meant to me. So I looked over at Roy and he had tears streaming down his face. And I asked if he'd ever been there before. And of course he said yes, he'd been there. He'd been there with his wife and they also had joyful, happy feelings there. So how did we move past that? Both of us standing on the threshold of the nursery crying. Not usually what they see, I think, when we go to the nursery. I don't think anyone knew what to do with us. So how do we move forward? We just let each other have a moment to be sad without trying to manage each other's personal feelings. And then we talked about the happy experiences of being there and we restructured it into something positive. We didn't mimic each other's experience, but we shared the moment from our own vantage point. After some time had passed, we could reclaim our experiences into a place of joy and renewal. So eventually it became our place to go and not some place that we went to separately, dragging that saddle pack of memories with us.
Physical triggers, these have more to do with our bodies remembering specific actions. It's those moments when someone interacts with us in a specific way that almost make us freeze up. Again, just recognizing the situation for what it is helps us to get through it. One day, my late wife and I went to test ride a motorcycle. I had given my motorcycle to my brother, and we went to purchase another one. We were test riding it, and we had an accident. A car pulled out in front of us. And in the moment before impact, Michelle grabbed me from behind and said into my ear, "I love you." It was a pretty nasty accident, but we got through it. Years and years and years and years and years and years later, Dale and I are riding on our motorcycle.
Our steel horse.
Our steel horse, yes. Thank you, our metal steed.
Yes.
And she hugged me from behind and said, "I love you."
I had no idea. I had never heard the story of right before the accident. So it wasn't anything I was trying to recreate.
A well of emotion sprang up.
Luckily, you didn't freeze because you were operating the steel horse.
Yes, that would be bad. But it was an instant, a flash of time, and it brought that back. And you can process it in the moment. The best thing to do was to move through it, and then Dale and I talked about it at length afterwards.
So here's some other ideas on managing physical triggers. I think just talking out loud about how it's affecting you is crucial. Sometimes you have somebody to talk to, and sometimes it's just you, and you're talking to yourself, or the cat, or God. There are some physical things that you can do to change the way your body's reacting in the moment. Now, not if you're operating a motorcycle, but if you're available, you put your hand on a particular area. Say your trigger is somebody grabbing your arm. So take a moment and put your hand on your arm and reclaim that so you can start bringing healing instead of feeling threatened or scared. If you have the opportunity, you can change the physical situation. You can stand up if you've been sitting and lie down if you need some quiet time. A breathing technique that I really like to use is putting one hand over my heart, the other one over my stomach, and just taking a breath into each hand. When we can slow our breathing down into a relaxed pace, our body starts to slow down. You can't feel panic and fear with slow breathing. If you have a pet, share some snuggle time. Grab a favorite book, grab a healthy snack, or watch a funny video. With practice, all of this gets easier.
And in all honesty, it can be an unhealthy snack too. Sometimes those are the better comfort food.
Hey, sometimes a chocolate chip cookie is all you need.
But I digress.
And a cup of coffee. So about this podcast, we're sharing our stories to help you feel less alone in your own grief. We understand that you won't be in the same mindset with us on every podcast, but we hope that you're grabbing some tools to help you heal and move forward. If you're listening to help someone else in their journey, we applaud your compassion. Loneliness is a major default in grieving and can keep us in a stuck place. We're coming at this from a belief that God heals us in His time and in His ways. We so appreciate your support and pray that it brings healing in your life. If you could subscribe and share our podcast, we can reach more people. Every little bit helps. We hope that you ride off into the sunset with a renewed outlook. Like Dale Evans
And Roy Rogers.
We're stronger together.
Next week's podcast will be hosted by Harry and Sally, talking about the dating game. We'll keep them out of the diner.
I'll have what she's having.